Welcome back to the Autopian podcast, and boy, are we glad you're here.
All right, welcome to the Autopian podcast. I'm David Tracy. I'm here with Beau Bachman and Jason Torchinsky, and
hello.
It's time to talk about some cars. We've had a great week on the website, on the Autopian, and we'll talk about some of the stories that we wrote. And, well,
and what's coming up next? We got all kinds of fun things happening.
We do have a lot of fun things. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about tanks. Jason Torchinsky drove tanks.
Multiple tanks.
That's super cool.
We're going to talk about LA versus Detroit in terms of car culture. I'm going to be moving to LA at some point in the near future. And as someone who's lived in Detroit for a long time, I'm convinced this is the mecca of car culture. And you know what? I'm sitting across, I'm looking at two people who disagree, Jason and Beau. I don't think they quite agree, but we'll see.
We will see.
And then we'll talk about, Jason wants to talk about darts. Quick, what's darts, Jason?
Darts is a Latvian builder of ultra luxury SUVs, and he is
mega luxury, ridiculous luxury.
They're most famous for making. Yeah, like remember the whale penis leather that was all on the internet?
Okay, good enough intro.
That
Jason.
is what it's.
We'll get to that in a second. We'll get to that in a second. And
whale penis leather. That's what it's all about.
We're also going to talk about. I took my minivan through Germany's inspection. In fact, the reason why I'm so tired right now, I just got back. German vehicle inspection is insanity. We got to talk about it.
Wait till you come to California.
Oh God. Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's what's in store. Let's.
And would you rather? We'll end it up with a would you rather.
That's the best one. That's what I want to see.
And we have a special guest.
Yes.
Did you mention our special guest?
Let's talk about our special guest,
Mercedes Streeter, an incredible writer and car nut who owns. I own a bunch of cars, but I live in suburban Detroit, and there's plenty of room out here. She lives in suburban Chicago, and I know where she lives, and there's not as much space, and she owns like 12 cars.
Yeah,
and a bus.
And these are modern-ish Volkswagens, which I don't understand how she keeps them running. Anyway, we'll get to that.
No one walks the walk like Mercedes does when it comes to like living it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's get started.
And who has the most non-running cars? That's what we're going to try to find out today too.
That's right.
We'll start with
as a percentage basis.
We'll start with tanks. I think Jason, you just got back.
Yes.
Where'd you go?
How many of us have driven a tank, by the way? I have never driven a tank, so I'm talking from a position of wow. Like, you think I should have driven a tank by now?
Of course, Beau,
like that's something normal every young boy has done in their life?
Beau, you've driven the craziest cars that people could only dream of driving. I would absolutely assume you've driven a tank by now.
Well, thanks for the assumption, but no, never driven a tank.
Well, here's the thing. If you want to, Beau, you go to Wisconsin, tiny little town of 675 people. I can't remember the name exactly. It begins with a K. But you go to drive a tank, and a nice man named Tony will let you drive any number of tanks that he's got.
Now, can anyone do this? Can our listeners look this up online and go to this guy and say, I want to drive your tank, dude?
That's why he had me come out and do it, because
I want to drive a tank.com. What is it?
It's driveatank.com. And
really?
That's it. Drive a tank. And people do bachelor parties. So his job, he actually revealed to me, a lot of his job is babysitting very hungover dudes who want to get in to drive a tank and then end up vomiting, beside a tank, which is almost as good because that happens a lot. But if you want to drive a tank,
I really want to be in a really cramped, noisy area that's really hot. Yeah.
Bouncy, a lot of diesel exhaust is what you probably want when you're feeling hungover.
Exactly. Love the smells.
Two-stroke diesel exhaust. Also, David, you'd think. Okay, so also, David, just so you get a sense of the scale, one of the tanks I drove had a 38-liter engine. 38 liters. That's a massive, massive engine. And some of these engines they do the other kind of opposed cylinder engine where the two pistons come in, share a cylinder, two crankshafts, and they meet in the middle, and the combustion happens between the two cylinders.
Between the two pistons.
Between the two pistons inside the cylinder. they're amazing. So there's all kinds of technical stuff, David, you'd love. But so what I got to do there is I got to drive. And actually, if you know a lot about tanks, you realize a lot of the things that look and seem like tanks aren't technically tanks. Sometimes they're just mobile artillery guns, and there's all kinds of classifications. So I drove.
Okay, so what's a tank?
Well, there's a very specific definition, which he does go into. I wish I knew it better, but it has to do with like a certain kind of frontline, self-propelled, turreted vehicle that qualifies as a tank. Although, can it be turreted? I'm trying to think of the very first tanks weren't actually turreted. Well, anyway. So here's what.
As long as they have rails and things.
They have treads. So I drove a armored personnel carrier, and that one was interesting because I drove it with all the hatches down, so you're literally looking through a tiny little window, which was extremely difficult actually. And I drove a Chieftain, which is like a giant British tank that I used to drive over a car, a Saturn SL2, the kind with that third door. I just crushed it.
Saturn.
And, the body panels that were plastic actually held up better than you'd think. And then I
want to hear about that. Hold on. Because look, I sold Saturns. I went back to Saturn before they came out. I was a part of that whole thing. And that was a big deal. We would show off these Saturns, the cutaway car. And part of it was these plastic door panels.
And we would
take them off and jump up and down on them and show them that the paint didn't break and you didn't have as much body work on a Saturn. It was actually brilliant. And I was so sad when they got away from that. But how did they hold up? What happened?
Pretty well. I mean, the car was crushed flat, but so I basically drove a tread right through the middle of the Saturn, crushing it. Roof rails, windshields crushed. But the fenders that I didn't directly crush, like on a steel car, would have bent or folded. These mostly were intact, but they did crack. That because they don't dent, but they do crack once you get it past a certain point. But I bet if we compared it head to head with a similar steel car, I think those panels, you would have a better shot of pulling a fender off the crushed by a tank Saturn and putting it on a Saturn and it looking pretty much okay than you would almost anything else. So I think
it was actually pretty ingenious for the time.
Oh, I agree.
In my opinion. And by the way, just for those listening, we're going to be able to see all of this on a video, correct? You did
yes, we are. We're shooting. We got a lot of great footage, including drone footage.
So cool.
You're going to see from overhead crushing the Saturn. We got all kinds of great footage. So also,
and we're going to show this on the Autopian.com, if I'm not mistaken.
On the Autopian.com, a fine website, I'm told.
So I hear.
Driving. Here's another thing. So I was driving a Russian T-55 tank, and all these tanks are basically. You're driving they're less hard to drive than you think. Basically, so like there's a clutch in the Russian tank that you engage, and basically you've got separate transmissions for each tread side. You're not necessarily braking the side that you want to turn into. You're actually kind of adjusting the gearing. So you're putting it into like a lower gear so it goes slower, and the outer tread into a higher gear so you like turn this way.
Wow. So
that's how you steer the backup pickup, by the way. When you're going doing wheelies, it's the same principle.
Oh, is it the same deal?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Wait. So you basically got like a 5-speed, one that runs the treads on one side, one that runs the treads on the other, and you shift the left side into first and the right side into third, and you're going left.
Yeah, that's basically the theory.
But it's simple.
But it's simplified in the sense that like on like this Russian tank, you had a clutch, you had a throttle, and you have 2 sticks. So basically, you push a stick forward, and it's basically the equivalent of like a higher gear, and you pull it back, and it's a lower gear. So if you want to turn this way, you pull back this and forward this way, and you'll turn this way. And then you kind of add throttle to the whole system. And the clutch is only used because you do have like one main drive line for like going into like neutral first or reverse or whatever to give your overall speeds. But it's jerkier than you think in the Russian tank. It's very difficult to get it to do a smooth turn. And of course, a tank is really wide, and I'm driving it in these little very wooded paths behind, like in this large area that they have. And I was sitting over, like your head is out, and there's the turret with the big gun, and I'm sitting in there, and I saw the big gun over here, and I didn't quite process just how much more tank there was beyond that gun, and I knocked over a tree, like a huge 25-foot
you knocked over a tree.
I ran over a tree. I didn't realize how wide I was, and I was on the thing, and I whacked into this tree, and then this huge tree just went wonk, and then he was like, just keep driving, so we just drove over.
Did they call the local arborist?
No, they couldn't be saved.
Oh,
Well,
geez.
I actually have a cutting, so I could try to. I told him I'll try to grow it as a sapling and replace it. But I did.
So what was the
drive
main
over.
difference between how a Russian tank drives and how a British tank drives? And no
So-
American, right? Just those two?
No, so you can't get in. So it's hardest to get American hardware. They just won't sell it. So almost everything he has is either British or Russian.
Okay.
The British tank was actually a little bit smoother in the way it moved. And the Russian tanks are very simple. In fact, on the treads themselves, there's like a pin that holds in the different plates of the treads. And the pin only has like a flat part on one side. So it kind of starts to work itself out as it runs. But built into the body of the tank is something that pushes the pins back in as the tread comes up and over. Like the lifespan of a tank, he was saying, is only about 46 minutes in battle. So these things aren't really necessarily built for longevity as such. They don't live that long normally. So you're not really wasting your time or money. It's more efficient to crank out a bunch of them than to make them really well, which is a hard thing to wrap your head around.
I'd never even thought about it that way before. That's crazy. Now, my biggest concern, if I was driving a tank, would be how to get a good cup of tea. Did any of them deal with that?
I'm glad you asked that, Beau, because that, of course, is a big factor. The British did develop specifically a way to cook tea in a tank, and it's called the what did they call it? It's called like a boiling vessel or something. So I've read about this before, and I just think it's the most charming thing in the context of a tank I can imagine. Because during World War II, they actually got in some trouble sometimes because they get out of their tanks to boil tea, because that's like a necessity for the British troops. So the British Army developed a cubicle boiling vessel that is specifically, they call it's for rations and things also, but it's really for making tea inside a tank. And luckily, Tony, the guy who runs Drive a Tank, I asked him about this, and he had one, and we actually got to see and hold it.
Yes. I've never seen this.
It's amazing. Beau, it's so amazing. It's like about this big. It's a tiny little unit. It has like an inner like bucket that comes out, and then there's like a volume in there for the water. But it's a tea kettle designed for fighting use. And apparently it's in all British Army fighting vehicles.
That is just brilliant.
Wow. It's just amazing. Brilliant. Yeah. That was one of my, and we go into the etymology of the word tank too, which is interesting also.
I'm looking forward to it.
We got to save some things for the video, right?
We'll save it. But yeah, it's good. We drove a lot of tanks. It's a lot of fun and a lot of some unexpected stuff. So, look for it on the Autopian.
That sounds amazing. How cool. I want to drive a tank.
So do I.
You can, Beau. That's an achievable dream.
All right, Torch. We got to, since we're talking about sort of bizarre, big machines, we should talk about darts. They don't make tanks, but they make tank-like machines in some ways.
Yeah. All right. So darts is a
DARTZ, right?
Usually all caps. Okay. They're a Latvian company.
For those following at home.
They make SUVs, very opulent SUVs. Most people have heard of them because they made an SUV that used whale penis leather, and that made all the news back in like 2009 because it was whale.
Did you talk to him about where he came up with that by any chance? Or how he found it?
I haven't asked about that. No, my theory is that they're Jewish whales, and these were just circumcision byproducts after he got invited to a whale bris, and they were just wondering. He sees this massive amount of we've
dealt with a lot of different leathers here at Galpin. I've tried experimenting with some things. We even did like a salmon leather before. We've done I'm trying to think of some other unusual ones, but penis leathers. This is a whole category.
Whale penises
I've seen
are
frog skins and all kinds of things, but penis is new.
Penis, I think it's designed to appeal to a certain kind of machismo market where you want to be sitting on penis leather, I guess. I'm not 100% sure, but
my guess is it only takes one penis for the entire chair too.
Yeah,
right?
They're substantial whale penis. I would think, I think you can probably do most of the interior of a car with one whale penis. So that's what they're known for. They make very opulent stuff, gold plated. They had a bulletproof baby seat for a while. It's sort of tongue in cheek, but the stuff is built to a pretty high standard. And the guy who runs it's a guy named Leonard Yankovic, and he's great.
Torch. Crazy. So what's it based on? What's the vehicle
platforms?
underneath?
They vary a lot. He uses all kinds of different things. But
Torch, I think you're chronically underselling this. Like
maybe
these are not just these are beyond opulent. This is like we're talking imagine opulent and ostentatious and just flashy and just wild and beyond what you could even fathom. Like it is.
Yeah, this is
like if Larry Flint really went for it, this would be the truck.
The act
for
of
those
Scrooge
who know Larry
McDuck
Flint,
diving into the pile of money. The act of that Scrooge McDuck dive. If you translated that feeling into a car, the darts would be close to that feeling because it's all about I am wealthy far beyond anything you can imagine, and just no expense paid and no taste. Taste does not get
no taste. No, but in
Leonard
a good way, no
taste.
Taste.
Oh no, there's a point where it becomes so far beyond tasteless that it wraps around again to being just fun.
Yes, and exactly. It's on purpose bad, right?
Yeah, no, he knows what he's doing. This is not. This is different than some nouveau riche guy showing up in something stupid. This is someone so far beyond giving a shit that they're just enjoying every penny of that vast
laughing at it.
And they're known for it. And so they make movie props as well, right? That
a lot of movie props.
And their props are all about taking items and just basically cranking it up to 11 on.
Wait, is that how they started? Was a prop company, or how did they get started in all this nonsense?
He was a car customizer from way back when, because he showed me some stuff he's made like back in the 80s. He has this great Beetle that he made called Froggy, which actually they have a new version of based on that that Chinese EV that was really popular. I'm trying to remember it. But they have like a version of that was just in the news. So they're doing
anyway, Torch, why are we talking about darts? It's because
we're talking about it because the new Austin Powers movie that hasn't officially been admitted to being made, Dr. Evil's chair was designed by darts and built by a colleague of theirs, and it is mostly car parts. And it is
so you're hearing it here on the Autopian for the first time in Hollywood. We are announcing that we know of the Austin Powers movie. What do they call it? The next movie?
They're just calling it Austin Powers 4.
Finding the chair. This is fantastic.
Well, we know about the alleged chair.
Alleged. Yes, that's correct.
Yes,
alleged chair of this allegedly upcoming Austin Powers movie.
There's a lot of
allegedly will be for Dr. Evil, and allegedly has a seat made of European license plates, and there's intake manifolds for the armrest.
You got to see this seat.
Sprayers.
Go to theautopian.com because it is a seat that's made of car parts, and it's just ridiculous.
A great shot of Dr. Evil in that too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's the kind of thing that
hopefully we can bring it up here to show everybody who's listening or can watch it.
But it's like a swivel chair, because you have to have a swivel chair if you're an evil villain, because you have to do the rotate around with your pet, and that like the swivel part there's no choice. So it's fun, and just knowing that Darts is doing this just makes it even better. And we were talking earlier.
When are we getting him on the show?
We gotta get him. We gotta get Leonard.
He will do it in a heartbeat.
Does he ever come to America?
I don't know. I haven't known. I wouldn't be shocked if he's not allowed to come into America for something he's done. I wouldn't be surprised to find that out. But as far as I know, I don't know. But we should talk to him about that. Or we should just go to Latvia and check out his setup there, because I imagine it's amazing.
Well, next time I'm in Latvia. Yes, for sure, though.
Yeah. So we'll get him on. But he's an amazing guy to talk to. And I think they're a lot of fun.
Darts is cool.
I'm going to bring up something that is kind of random, but we wrote about it this week. It's about old school air conditioning on cars. It was a story that went up this week. And I wonder, Beau, if you have any experience with those swamp coolers. Have you ever had a car with those, or you've seen those, right? Those...
I had like a vague recollection of them, but no, seeing that was like, oh yeah, the old swamp cooler, add to the window. No, we didn't do those or have that. We actually were pretty good at doing air conditioning back in the day, but that's another story. But no, we never sold those. I thought that was really kind of ingenious how they worked. But tell us about
brilliant.
It.
Okay,
explain it, David.
Yeah, I will share a screen and we can look at it, but for people who can't see, the way these things work is incredibly simple, but also not. It's simple when you look at the components that make this thing up. So hold on, let me share my screen.
These are big in the VW community, by the way. Beetle, like people with vintage Beetles love to show them with like a huge roof rack and one of these swamp coolers. They have a following.
So before the refrigerant-based air conditioning systems that you're all used to, right? You're all used to, you turn the AC on your car and you might hear like a little relay or something. You hear the clutch in your air conditioning compressor activate. And maybe if you're Jason or probably Beau, you have a car that has so little power that when you turn the AC on, you feel the jerk because you just lost like
my pal. My pal, it's like a speed brake. You literally like I actually feel guilty putting it on because it takes such a toll. But yes.
So that's what you're used to. So you've got a compressor that's run by the internal combustion engine via a belt, and then you've got a condenser in the front, and you've got an evaporator under the dash, and it's all about expanding and compressing this refrigerant. And the refrigerant has to be, installed by a professional because it's bad for, whatever chlorofluorocarbons. Anyway, it doesn't matter because back in the day, they didn't have any of this fancy stuff. Air conditioning wasn't really a thing. Like you just pop open the vent windows. Like that was air conditioning back in the day, or you rolled the windows down. Or maybe back then, older cars had, like crotch vents. They were thoughtful about vent placement. But if you could not stand the heat, even with all
what's the crotch vent? Now you got me thinking about crotches. Why did you go there? What,
you don't know about the crotch vent?
I'm thinking about my swampy crotch as I'm driving down the street.
Well, honestly, most people are. A lot of people are thinking about their swampy crotch if it's really hot, and it's a problem. And what I love is a lot of automakers, including American Motors, had a vent right below the steering column.
Okay.
And it was groin. Right there. It was a straight up groin cooler. Like that's what it was for, and it makes sense. And I think if I recall, someone came to us at our previous employer, Jason, and asked us to put out a survey on whether there's demand for a crotch cooler.
I remember that. It was like a PR company or like an actual automaker was asking about it, if I remember.
Oh, wow.
And I think everybody was pro crotch vents. And crotch vents, even the ones that are integrated in the dash, even before then, like in 1952, Beetles had a very specific crotch vent right behind the front fenders. And like don't male Jeeps have like a little crotch level vent that used to open up?
No, the postal Jeeps have the little flaps that you kick with your feet, and it just sort of scoops it from the outside. It doesn't go to the crotch. It kind of
doesn't go to the crotch. Well,
it goes to the legs. Anyway, okay, enough about the crotch. The point is, the simplest form of staying cool, of course, is getting convection via windows and whatnot. But if you still couldn't handle that back in the day, what you'd get is what's now called a swamp cooler or an evaporative cooler. It was basically this big cylinder that you'd clamp onto your window, your passenger side window, and it really is incredibly simple. The innards, it's basically just like a big cylindrical filter or like or rag. It's like a cylindrical.
Yeah, what are we looking at here?
So there's a cylinder that is absorb. It's a material that will absorb water.
So this is something, just for those who can't see, it's hanging off of the windshield or window, excuse me. Yep. So you roll it up and it's sticking kind of out of the window, but it's still in because you rolled it up so it stays in there. Yeah, and now it's like it's like a singular, that's not a word.
It's cylindrical, yeah. It's so you've got a cylinder that's wedged into your passenger side window. There's an intake, so that the front of the cylinder is the intake for the air, and then the air travels through the cylinder and through this. It's just like a cylindrical sponge inside the cylinder, and then the air comes out the side of the cylinder and into the car. So it goes into the front, passes over this sponge, and then comes out the side and into the car.
And the sponge is wet. Right, the sponge is water.
You keep it moist.
Yeah, so you fill the cylinder with water, and there's a little string that hangs into the car. There's a little string that somewhere that you just pull, and when you pull the string, it rotates the sponge, and it gets it wet again. So it dips it into and makes sure that you want the sponge to be wet so that the air that passes over it, is passing over a wet sponge. Now, here's the thing. You might be thinking, okay, so hot air passes over a wet sponge. Okay, that seems pretty simple. But that's only going to work if the sponge is colder than the hot air, right? Like you might think, once the water gets the same temperature as the air, how is that going to get any cooler?
And David?
Well, it's evaporative cooling. So it basically, and there's a steam table in our article because of course I had an engineer write
I love
this.
how thorough this is.
Yeah. Robert wrote this, did a great job. There's a steam table in here. The point is, it takes energy to evaporate water. So you've got this hot air coming from outside. It's going over this wet sponge. And even if the sponge is the same temperature, the sponge, the water will start to evaporate and it will pull energy out of the air, cooling it. So that's really.
Can I try this with a sponge at home?
You have to make sure that you have some air flowing over the sponge, but yeah, theoretically you could make your own.
So you can
Anyway,
blow
have
over
you guys
a
ever
sponge.
experienced this and feel the cold air coming out of it? Does it work?
I've actually never felt it. I'm very curious. It only
Okay,
works.
we got to try to find one of these things and actually do this for real.
seen
That's got to
plenty
be a
of
goal.
them,
And maybe if anyone out there actually knows where one of these are, we can find it. Do you know where one is? I want to try this.
Oh, you can buy them on eBay. Yeah, old school swamp coolers, and yeah, I want to see how cool they are too. I'm very curious. But it only works if you're driving. It does, like if you're sitting in traffic and there's no air passing over it, it's not going to work.
Okay, well, this is a
if you had an
curiosity.
electric fan, could you use an electric fan to blow air through and still have it be cooled?
You could.
You should, right?
You could.
You could.
All right, let's find one of these things and put it to the test.
Yeah, let's try it out.
Okay, so there's our, just our little bit of tech today. Now we need to talk about, well, I'm moving to Los Angeles at some point in the next.
At some point, when? We keep hearing these things.
I want to go
the
soon.
moving truck sitting outside.
Here's the
waiting
problem.
Patiently.
I have 10 cars, and
I got
one
space.
in LA now too.
You got okay. So what's the best way to move 10? Well, first off, I'm not going to bring all 10 cars because that's
a good idea. We got shitty cars out here you can buy.
Right, totally.
Or be given.
There are certain vehicles that I just can't get rid of, like because I just love them too much.
I agree with
so
that.
The question is, what would be a better call? Should we just have a convoy of my vehicles and just enlist you guys and some other people in just a road trip of shit boxes across the country, or
that would take like 3 or 4 weeks.
No. Well, yeah. Or do we try to get one of those car haulers and see if we can get like a Ram 3500 or a Ford F350 or whatever? And because I've always been curious, what's it like to that would be the ultimate test of these heavy duty trucks. We review cars on the Autopian, we review trucks. A truck towing like 13,000 pounds worth of cars behind it would be.
I bet we could convince I bet Mike Levine would love to see the publicity from F-150 towing one of those things, David. I bet you can convince someone at Ford.
It might have to be like a 550 or something. I don't know. Anyway,
or a Maverick.
Good try.
Yeah. Anyway, so I have a couple of concerns about leaving Detroit. One of them is the car culture, which the car culture in Detroit is unbelievable. I mean, of course, you've all heard about Woodward Avenue. It is as great as they say it is. You go out there on any given warm day, like Thursday night, Friday night, whatever. Go out there, pull up a lawn chair, and you'll see entire families, kids, moms, dads, sitting on the side of that road for hours, just looking at the cars traveling up and down. And it's like everyone has a tie to the auto industry. People will tell you crazy stories.
That's true.
My dad used to work over at AMC and he did this and that. And we used to rebuild engines together. And it's like, it's incredible. The car culture here is amazing. But I've also heard the same about LA. But is it different? Is it better?
Actually, okay, here's, I think, a difference. All right. Now, I lived in LA about 20 years. Beau's lived there longer, so he's going to have maybe a different experience. But here's the thing I noticed about LA compared to Detroit. Detroit's car culture is fantastic. I totally agree. LA's got a much broader variety of cars, and they're just around. For example, when I lived in LA, just not at car shows, just on the street, I used to work at a place where parked daily on the street was a Fossil Vega. Like, and you'll have to Google it for people who don't know, an incredibly rare car. On my street by my house, there was a Lancia. There was a guy with a 356. These are just cars that are driven. I had a Reliant Scimitar. There was like checker marathons. There was a place where I knew there were like multiple Fiat X19s. There were Lancia Aprilia. Like you would just make this map, Citroens, like everything ended up in LA at some point because people would import all kinds of stuff. And
there's literally like a GM Futureliner that was parked behind our local Cadillac dealership. Remember that?
I remember seeing that. Yeah, I remember
it was there for 20 years. It was crazy.
The car from Damnation Alley.
What do you mean?
Remember
what do you mean Futureliner? What is
the custom thing they made for like in the 50s, the double-decker bus thing? It just ended up there. But you get movie
the one that
cars
sold for $4 million, and everyone freaked out. Yeah, one was just randomly parked in the back of a street forever.
Do you remember in Burbank on Barham Boulevard, the Landmaster from that movie Damnation Alley? It was like this massive custom truck thing that had these trios of three wheels.
With the 9 wheels. Yeah, that was Dean Jeffrey's shop.
Yeah. Oh, that was his shop. Because I remember driving by there all the time, and it was
absolutely. It was there again for decades. That was so cool to see every day. I miss Dean Jeffries.
And so, like, LA just has
one of the greatest customizers of all time, by the way.
Oh, Dean
Jeffries,
the
Green Hornet and Monkey Mobile, all kinds of great things.
So, like, when you're talking about families go out on on nice days, and there's all these cars everywhere, that's just life in LA. People daily drive things that you just can't imagine. And they're just out there. And then you have like the motor book store in Burbank where people every weekend will show up with all kinds of crazy stuff. Like the owners drive like a Traction Avant and it's always in the parking lot. And any day you show up there, someone's bringing something amazing.
So we have a similar thing every Saturday morning at a toy store here called Pasteiners. The who's who of the automotive world shows up there, and the cars you see there are just nuts. You will see car designers, engineers, executives just hanging out, sipping coffee Saturday morning. And it's like, obviously Detroit's going to have more industry folks, even though there's, more starting to head west, it seems. But we're going to have the industry folks and people associated with the industry. You've got weather, you've got no rust.
No rust is a big deal. Stuff survives out there.
And that is big. Yeah. But my biggest thing that I'm gonna find out is I always see Detroit car culture. I almost think the car cultures can be like almost like represented by the main car shows. Like Detroit car culture, Woodward. West Coast car culture, Pebble Beach. And I don't know if it's representative.
It's an extreme,
yeah. That's
not all Pebble Beach.
You don't have to be rich in LA to enjoy the car culture.
Is that true? Is that true?
Yeah, I wasn't rich, and I was involved, and I had an interesting car. And
what about today? What about today? Like, can you get, a cheap, interesting car out there and operate it and get it through emissions and inspection?
You were given one, David. You were literally given one for free.
As long as it's pre-74, you're in great shape.
Yeah, pre-74, no smog. David, just to fill everyone in, got a Nash Metropolitan. Someone gave him.
That is true.
Very
that
generous.
Stuff exists.
And by the way, what is better or worse? I don't know that one's better than the other. It's what you're individually into, right? I mean, certainly you're right. Detroit, it's the Motor City.
Detroit's great too, absolutely.
Everybody there has a connection to the car business. So therefore, yes, if you said on a per capita basis, is there more car culture in Detroit? Maybe, because you only get a fraction of people here in Los Angeles that are into cars. But people out here that are into cars are really into cars, and the variety is much, much more spread out. Yeah. I think there's more of an open mind on what kind of cars we dig and accept, and also there's just the variety, because now out here in LA we got everything from low riding and customs, and
the Japanese car culture out there
absolutely
has been strong since like the 60s in a way that it's only more recently been picking up everywhere else. Like that stuff's great. The lowrider culture that Beau just talked about, like you won't find better paint anywhere. Like the work that's done on those is like art, and you can go to Griffith Park on a Saturday and just randomly there'll be like 3 of them sitting there, and they're astoundingly good. Like, and there's all kinds of subcultures.
And this is probably the car customizing capital of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, and that has a lot to do with the weather. As you know, remember George Barris in an interview was talking to a guy from the East Coast, and they could only work on their cars, you know, when it's nice. And out here, it was, you know, literally 365 days a year almost. You know, so it's
remember Paul Greenstein's shop, David, when we went to Paul Greenstein's place. The guy with all the Tatras and he's got an original unrestored Chrysler Airflow that he drives. Like things like that, it can exist in LA also. Like Paul has a really unusual eclectic collection, but he drives them, he makes them work, and he has friends who have similar collections. Like all of that exists in it. You're not going to be giving up. You'll be going to a different car culture, certainly.
It's different.
But I don't think you're going to be giving anything up.
To be totally honest, I'm nothing but excited. To be told, like, you know, obviously I got to represent Detroit and it's going to be different. But if you're a car person and you've experienced car culture somewhere, to be going somewhere else that has a strong car culture, it's just going to be the amount of just stuff I'm going to learn about cars out there that I haven't seen. It's going to be epic. I'm pumped for it.
Yeah, this place is great. I mean, you're okay. I have to admit, you're like the first person I've talked to in a long time that's moving to LA and not out of LA. The truth is, LA is a fabulous, unbelievably fantastic, wonderful, wonderful city. California is, I think, the most gorgeous place on earth, literally. Yes, we have absolutely insane, crazy government that makes no sense, and it's idiotic, and it can drive everyone crazy. So you just ignore all that and just enjoy the cars. And you know, you gotta plug your nose when you're paying your taxes. But other than that, it's a great place.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be cheap, David. Your cost of living is definitely going to be up. I mean, LA is more recently just it's expensive and not easy. It's a pain in the ass to get around too sometimes.
Yeah, I'm concerned about that.
You got to have a car out here. No public transportation, none of that.
The fact that I got a car for free, I'm pretty pumped about. I'm already making some strategic moves on that front.
And a great car too, super cool.
It is a great. Have you checked it out, Beau? Have you walked over and seen it yet?
Just barely. I haven't gone through it yet. It looks appropriately awful in a great way.
Okay, thanks for joining us this week on the Autopian podcast. We mentioned that we were going to talk about German inspection in my incredible diesel van. We are going to discuss that with our next guest, Mercedes Streeter. We're pumped to have her on.